question period, période de questions. Honourable Senators, before proceeding to question period, I would like to remind you that pursuant to the order adopted yesterday, during question period, main questions and responses are limited to 1 minute each and are followed by a maximum of 1 supplementary question per main question, with these supplementary questions and responses being limited to a maximum of 30 seconds each. In all these cases, the reading clerk stands 10 seconds before the time expires. Senator Housakos.
Honourable Senators, my question is for the government leader. The Prime Minister has repeatedly promised to balance the operating budget within 3 years, distinguishing it from capital spending. The problem is this, government leader. While expenses can reasonably be categorized as operating or capital, neither the main estimates nor our public accounts make any such distinction for revenue. This means the government can allocate revenue however it likes, then claim the operating budget is balanced. That's not fiscal discipline. Of course, that's fiscal and accounting creativity. Canadians elected this government to deliver real solutions, not reheated slogans. So, Leader, when will the government present an actual plan to balance the budget in full, not just the parts that it chooses, but a fully balanced budget?
That's right. Where's the budget?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question. The government is taking a number of steps to improve the Canadian economy, and that will redound to the benefit of all Canadians, including our balance sheets. As the Prime Minister said, the government will present a much more comprehensive and effective, pragmatic and ambitious budget in the fall and this will be done it's important that this be done right, and that's what the government is planning to do.
Senator Housakos.
Government leader, in 2024, 75% of total revenue came from personal and corporate income taxes and, of course, the GST. There is no objective way to split that between operating and capital budgets. I think most of us know that. This makes the promise to balance the operating budget little more than a fiscal mirage. And, of course, I remind everyone that Canadians have elected Prime Minister Carney with great hope. Will the government commit to giving Canadians a credible, comprehensive plan to balance a full federal budget and show that it intends to get there, and soon?
Senator Gold.
The government has identified its plans for both presenting a comprehensive budget in the fall and for reducing the growth of government and many other measures in order to balance the operating budget, and it stands by those commitments.
Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is also for Senator Gold. Senator Gold, the Prime Minister has acknowledged that the federal government's operating spending has been growing at an unsustainable rate of 9% annually. He promised in the throne speech to bring it to below 2%. But the government's main estimates for this year tell a different story. They show a significant increase in operational spending compared to last year. The main estimates for this year have increased 8%, but operating spending has increased more than that, and certainly not at the 2% commitment included in the throne speech. How can the government explain the significant increase in operating spending in the main estimates, given its commitment to what it calls a new fiscal discipline?
They can't.
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question. This is a new government that has been in power for a very short time. It has an ambitious program that it is rolling out, the details of which are familiar to all members in this chamber. The estimates will be the subject of study in this chamber, as they will be in the other place, and further opportunities will be available to honourable senators to get detailed responses to those questions.
Senator Marshall.
Thank you. Supplementary. Senator Gold, there's many Canadians who are concerned about the country's fiscal position. What should we as Canadians expect 4 years from now? Will this be another broken promise?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Senator Gold?
Canadians, thank you for your question. Canadians can expect that today and for every day hereafter, this government will focus intensively and intently on improving the economic situation for Canadians across this great country. Parliament recently, on 2 occasions, voted its confidence in this government, and this government will continue to work hard for all Canadians.
Senator Daskal?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for Senator Gold. In February 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, Canada and its partners in the G7 and EU froze the equivalent of 425 billion Canadian of Russian state assets. Most of these are managed by Euroclear, a security depository based in Belgium. There's at least 22 billion Canadian held by Euroclear in Canadian banks. The EU must vote every 6 months to renew the freeze, and a Russian-friendly regime like Hungary could veto renewing the freeze this July, meaning that the frozen assets, including Canada's share, would immediately be returned to Russia. On May 22nd, the G7 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Banff stated assets in our jurisdictions will remain immobilized until Russia ends its aggression and pays for the damage it has caused to Ukraine. Can the government provide absolute assurance that these assets...
Senator Gold, thank you. Senator Daskal, Senator Gold?
Thank you for your question. I want to be clear that Canada stands resolute in its commitment to supporting Ukraine as it defends its sovereignty and its independence in the face of Russia's brutal war of aggression. I stand corrected. With regard to your question, I can confirm that the government is committed to the statement from the G7 finance ministers and central bankers. The government is also committed to working with allies to continue to coordinate support to promote the early recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine.
Senator Daskal?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Canadian government has the ability to independently freeze the 22 billion Canadian held in the Euroclear Canadian accounts, so that if the EU fails to extend the freeze, the funds will remain frozen. This can be done without new legislation. Will the government undertake to do this as a guarantee?
Senator Gold?
Thank you for your question. As I have stated, the government is committed to continue to work with its allies to deliver on its promises and on its support for Ukraine.
Senator Wu?
Senator Gold, on May 19, the government of Canada joined with France and UK to oppose the expansion of Israeli military operations in Gaza. The 3 countries threatened targeted sanctions if Israel did not cease its military offensive, lift restrictions on humanitarian aid, and halt the expansion of settlements in the West Bank. Since then, the Israeli government has not only continued its onslaught, but has also severely limited the amount of aid going into Gaza, which has been described by the UN as, quote, the hungriest place in the world, unquote. What sanctions will the government impose, and when will this happen?
Senator Gold?
Thank you for your question. The government remains committed to relief and to rebuilding efforts in Gaza. Will continue to work with partners to ensure that aid reaches Palestinian civilians who desperately need it. Government position on the conflict has been long-standing and has not changed. It's committed to achieving a 2-state solution, ultimately, where Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace and security within international recognized borders. It continues to call for the release of all hostages held by Hamas, continues to affirm there is no role for Hamas in the future governance of Gaza, and continues to call for a ceasefire. It will continue to work with its allies to help bring an end to the suffering of all peoples in the region.
Senator Wu.
And I would say the government continues to utter threats without consequences. The same statement says that Canada supports Israel's right to defend itself, but that its recent escalation is, quote, intolerable and wholly disproportionate, unquote. In fact, the situation has been intolerable and disproportionate for more than 18 months. Senator Gold, does the government of Canada now accept that Israel has exhausted its right to self-defense and that the international community has to step in to prevent further violations of international humanitarian law, including genocide?
Senator Gold.
That is not the government's position.
Senator Lewis.
My question is for Senator Gold. On page 14 of the 2025 Liberal Party election platform, the government committed to, quote, help Canadian farmers get their goods to market at low cost, particularly in Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, by extending the extended railway interswitching pilot by 3 years. When can we expect the government to act on its campaign commitment?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question, Senator, and welcome to the Senate of Canada. Let me, with the time remaining, go right to your question. With regard to your question, the government is working with the provinces, as you know, will continue to act immediately in all respects to assist citizens in all respects. With regard to the question of the timetable, I don't have a specific answer for you, but the government remains committed to delivering on this initiative, and I'll raise this with the minister at my first opportunity.
Senator Lewis.
Thank you, Senator Gold. Competitive shipping rates are important not only for the agricultural sector, but for all commodities, many of which are facing uncertainty because of trade and tariffs. For my part, I'd like to see the government go further and make the pilot permanent and accessible to a distance of 500 kilometers for all commodities. Could you please pass that on to the minister as well?
Senator Gold.
I'd be very pleased to pass that on. Thank you.
Senator Cardozo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the government representative. First, I want to thank you for your words about the Honourable Marc Garneau as we reflect on the life of this wonderful Canadian. My question, when our country and our identity is under threat, the presence of national institutions is more important than ever before in maintaining and building our sense of nationhood. Chief among those institutions is CBC Radio-Canada, which serves to enhance our sense of who we are. In the recent election, two parties promised to defund the CBC. The Liberal Party had promised to update its mandate and increase the funding in a modest amount. Do you agree that at this time the CBC Radio-Canada has a critical role to play, and is the Liberal government still committed to this objective, and when will we see plans for the mandate review and funding?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your questions and for your continued advocacy in this important matter. As you've pointed out, Senator, CBC Radio-Canada is one of Canada's great institutions, almost a century old, and represents a very concrete and very real foundation for the maintenance and nourishment of Canadian culture. It belongs to all of us as Canadians who rightly have high expectations of their public broadcaster. While I do not have a timeline in response to your questions, I can assure this chamber that the government will do what it takes and what it can do to ensure that Canadians can continue to count on a reliable source of information and entertainment made in Canada for Canadians and by Canadians.
Senator Cardozo.
Thank you, Senator Gold. At this time in our history, there are several other cultural institutions which also play a key role in our nation, including the National Film Board, the Canada Council of the Arts, the National Gallery, the Human Rights Museum in Winnipeg, and the Canadian Museum of Immigration in Halifax. I'm speaking fast because of our time limits now. I think I'm getting in there. Given the government's plan to reduce spending, does the government recognize the benefit of these Canadian icons in nation building?
Senator Gold.
The government is, as are Canadians, very aware of and appreciative of the important role that our cultural institutions play in all regions of our Canada. Hope Canadians will continue to take advantage of them and learn more about our great country.
Senator McDonald.
Senator Gold. In August 2021, during a campaign stop in British Columbia, Prime Minister Trudeau promised that a re-elected Liberal government would spend $500 million to train and equip 1,000 new firefighters across the country. The funds, he said, would also be used to acquire vital equipment like water bombers and helicopters, essential tools in fighting the increasingly devastating wildfires we see every summer. We are now 4 years removed from that announcement. Thousands of Canadians have been displaced, communities have burned, and the toll on our environment and economy continues to mount. Senator Gold, can you tell this chamber Exactly how many of those promised 1,000 firefighters have actually been trained and hired, and how many helicopters and water bombers have been purchased by this government since this commitment in 2021?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question and for reminding us, if indeed we needed reminding, of the devastation that the wildfires are wreaking on so many communities in so many of our provinces. And the government is exceptionally grateful to all the firefighters and the support that have been mobilized across this country and indeed, if my understanding is correct, from beyond our borders to assist in this important life-saving work. This government will continue to work with partners in the provinces, territories, and Indigenous communities to create circumstances to both help those in need and one hopes to build greater resilience so that we can minimize the risk of these devastating fires in the future.
Senator McDonald.
That's not an answer at all.
No.
Canadians need results. If the full $500 million has not been spent as promised, can you provide a clear breakdown of how much has actually been spent to date and explain what is causing the delay in delivering these urgently needed firefighting resources?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you. It is an important question in terms of how we are going to manage to increase our capacity to fight these climate-related disasters, and I'll certainly raise this question with the minister.
Senator Richards.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question for Senator Gold. Senator Gold, for years the concerns about flawed bills put forward by our previous government, Bill 69 and 48, for instance, the carbon tax, and our defensive posture was not only dismissed, but often ridiculed and rejected in the Senate. Now the very cabinet who shunned them are set to enact these very same policies which they had so glibly dismissed. Will you say irreparable damage has already been done?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. I think that as we stand at this stage of our history, we have much to build upon, and we have a government in place that has set out an ambitious, bold plan to help us navigate through what is the most challenging geopolitical environment for the world, but certainly for Canada since the Second World War. Canadians have elected a government that is focused on the economy, focused on improving the prospects for Canadian individuals, families, and businesses across this country, and will continue to work to that end.
Senator Richards.
Yeah, just a quick supplementary. I mean, can you admit that much of the policies that the former government promoted in this chamber has bled in many ways into the horrible calamity this country finds itself in today?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. That is not how this government views the achievements of the past government, notwithstanding that at this time, and given the changed circumstances in the world, the new current government is taking steps to move us forward. This government has a plan, and it is executing that plan, and that will be how it will be judged.
Senator Boyer.
Senator Gold, as you are aware, Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982 affirms the existing Aboriginal and treaty rights of Indigenous people in Canada. Rights which include, among others, self-determination, land rights, the duty of governments to consult and accommodate. Despite these legal obligations, we continue to witness provincial legislation that disregards these protections. To use only one recent example of many found across the country, in Ontario, Bill 5, which centralizes control over municipal boundaries and planning processes without proper consultations with affected First Nations. This is deeply troubling. Could you please advise what specific measures the federal government is taking to ensure that provincial legislation upholds constitutionally protected Indigenous rights and the duty to consult is meaningfully observed?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. The inherent rights of Aboriginal peoples, which are recognized and constitutionalized in our charter, bind all levels of government in all of their actions. The federal government has a responsibility which it shall discharge, is discharging and shall discharge in areas of its jurisdiction, and the same obligations, constitutionally entrenched obligations, bind those provinces acting within the exclusive areas of their jurisdiction. And it is the expectation of the federal government that all governments continue to all governments respect their obligations as constitutionally entrenched and recognized.
Senator Boyer.
Thank you, Senator Gold. This incident is emblematic of a broader and persistent exclusion of Indigenous voices from critical decision-making forums. Just this week at the First Minister's meeting, an event that deliberates on matters of national importance, where critical decisions affecting all jurisdictions were discussed, First Nations leaders were not invited to participate. Such omissions are not only inconsistent with the spirit of reconciliation, but they also perpetrate colonial power structures that treat Indigenous governments as secondary rather than as equal partners within the Canadian Federation.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Boyer. Senator Gold.
This government is committed to the principles set out in UNDRIP. It is committed to work with Indigenous communities to concretize those constitutionally entrenched rights to which you refer. And this government and the Prime Minister has been and will continue to be in consultation with Indigenous leaders and rights holders going forward.
Senator McAdam.
My question is for the government representative. In recent speeches and appearances, including the speech from the throne, the government has committed that it will be guided by a new fiscal discipline: spend less so Canadians can invest more. The Prime Minister stated that government must become much more productive, including by focusing on results over spending. Senator Gold, last fall, when representatives from the Treasury Board Secretariat appeared before the Senate National Finance Committee, they highlighted that they were reviewing their policy on results. The policy on results is an important accountability tool, setting out fundamental requirements for the collection and use of performance information to manage programs and assess their effectiveness and efficiency. It also highlights the importance of results in management and expenditure decision-making, as well as public reporting. Can you please provide an update on the progress being made?
Thank you, Senator McAdam. Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for underlining the importance to this government of focusing on results. And this government and the Prime Minister has brought that particular focus to the work of the government, and will continue to do so. I'm not in a position to comment on the work behind that is being done by the government and within the ministries, but I can assure this chamber that this is a primary focus of the Prime Minister and of this government.
Senator McAdam.
Thank you, Senator Gold. I also wanted to follow up on my Senate colleague's question of last week regarding access to the outstanding departmental results report data on the GC Infobase website. Can you provide an update on when the government will post that data on the website?
Senator Gold.
Thank you. I am still not in a position to provide a timeline for that, but the issue, I will continue to raise that issue at every opportunity.
Senator Patterson.
Madam Speaker, my question is for Senator Gold. A few days ago, Ukraine undertook what amounts to a modern-day Trojan horse attack against legitimate Russian military targets. No civilians were harmed. Ukrainian drones launched from container trucks deployed deep into Russia, and they destroyed many strategic aircraft parked at Russian air bases, some of which were over 5,000 kilometers away, including in Siberia. The aircraft that were destroyed or damaged represent a significant portion of the Russian Air Force's strategic strike fleet, including those routinely used to probe North America, including Canada's Arctic. Those aircraft were not just a threat to Ukraine, but to Canada and NATO. Much of this success was due to the amazing new and inexpensive drone technology created by Ukraine. So my question is, what is Canada doing to help Ukraine further develop its drone technology and get into the battlefield in record time? And how are Canadian drone manufacturers being encouraged by government to collaborate with Ukrainian partners so that Canada can benefit from these technological advances?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question, and once again for underlining the heroic actions of Ukraine in defense of its territory and its sovereignty. Canada has been from the start an important partner to Ukraine and collaborates in many areas. I'm not in a position to share information about what measures are being discussed to deal with military matters for reasons that this chamber, for the several reasons that this chamber will appreciate. But I can assure you that Canada is doing what it can and playing its part with its allies to support Ukraine in this in their just defense of the unjust war perpetrated by Russia.
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Senator Gold. And I hope we take advantage of their creativity and ingenuity to help us. Senator Gold, the destruction of these Russian aircraft significantly decreased Russia's strategic strike capability, a threat to Canada. However, more is needed. I, along with Senator Kutcher and others, were recently briefed on the Sky Dome initiative in Ukraine. Sky Shield can help provide much-needed umbrella of protection over critical infrastructure in Ukraine, such as nuclear reactors, as well as saving countless lives of innocent.
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Senator Gold.
Again, Canada is in discussions with the Ukraine and its allies to do its part to enhance the security of the territory of Ukraine, and will continue to do so.
Senator Usakos.
Government leader, the recent sham elections in Venezuela, marked by political repression, mass voter disillusionment, and an absurd claim over sovereign Guyanese territory, have once again revealed Nicolás Maduro's regime for what it is, a dictatorship clinging to power through fraud. While other democracies have responded with clarity and conviction, Canada's voice has been conspicuously muted. Given our long-standing commitment to defending democracy and human rights abroad, can the government explain why its response to these fraudulent elections has been so tepid, and what specific measures is being taken to support the Venezuelan people?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for reminding us about how not only fragile our robust and real democracies are, but how important it is to look more closely to see where the form of democracy may obscure governments that are truly not committed to the democratic principles we hold so dear. I will raise this question with the minister because I'm simply not in a position to provide details of how the government has been managing this with its allies, its like-minded allies in the democratic world.
Senator Usakos.
Senator Gold, your government has been quick to condemn Israel, even as 56 hostages, including Canadian Israelis, remain in the hands of Hamas. Yet nearly 2 weeks have passed since Venezuela's sham local elections, and the government has remained completely silent, while other international democracies around the world have spoken up and condemned. Why is it so difficult for this government, our Liberal government, to stand up for freedom and democracy equally around the world?
Senator Gold.
Well, again, Senator, I will certainly raise this with Minister Anand at my first opportunity. Canada does stand with its democratic allies in defense of those liberal democratic principles that are at the foundation of our democracy and those of our democratic allies.
Senator McFedrin.
Thank you so much, Your Honor. I truly appreciate this fairness to an unaffiliated senator. Senator Gold, I fear for innocent civilians, especially women, girls, youth, disproportionately impacted by landmines. Since 1997, the Ottawa Treaty has banned the use of landmines across the world. 165 states parties no longer use landmines. Stockpiles of more than 40 million have been destroyed. Tragically, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, and now Finland have announced their intention to follow Lithuania in withdrawing from the Ottawa Treaty. Without this treaty, civilians, mostly women and children, would be killed or maimed by these indiscriminate weapons. What is the Government of Canada doing to protect the integrity of the Ottawa Treaty?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question, and again for highlighting the role that Canada played historically in this. In a previous life, I was a member of the Landmines Foundation, and was honored to be involved in that. I do not know what specific steps this government may be taking currently with regard to those countries who have expressed an intention to withdraw, but I certainly will raise this with the minister at my earliest convenience.
Senator McFedrin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Loss of limbs or death are irreversible harms. Please try to gain more specific information, because my question is, what is happening to strengthen Canada's diplomatic stance to protect the benefits of the Ottawa Treaty and stem the regression of withdrawal?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for providing that further context to the questions that I certainly will raise.
Alors, la période de questions est maintenant.
The time for question period is now expired.